In the franchise-driven landscape we live in today, there isn't a single more important date than May 4th, 2012. On this day, the Avengers opened with a record $207 million, along with a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Marvel had taken 6 B-list comic book characters and created the biggest franchise of its time. Since then, Marvel has gone on to release 15 films with a worldwide haul of $11 billion. Needless to say, other studios wanted it, and eventually they did, with the last 5 years giving us a plethora of attempts at cinematic universes. Star Wars is back, DC has its controversial film line, a Spider-Man reboot came and went, and just about any team or matchup film you can imagine has been attempted or set up.
Let them fight.
And yet, in these last 5 years, no one has done it quite as well as Marvel did on their first go. They are still the king at making films that impact the cultural zeitgeist as well as being consistently profitable. I think a lot of the success Marvel is receiving right now can be attributed to crucial creative decisions made early on in the franchise's life. A lot of these decisions occurred with the franchise's first film, Iron Man, a surprise hit that turned Robert Downey Jr. into a megastar. Today, I want to examine these decisions and explore how they laid out the foundation for the biggest franchise of all time. It's amazing in retrospect how big of a hit Iron Man was, let alone the franchise it spawned. It was the first feature film from an independent studio. It was directed by a filmmaker who was more known for comedy than action. The lead was barely a celebrity, most known for his very public problems with substance abuse. Even the script wasn't finished before filming, with many writers passing on rewrites in the fear that it might negatively impact their careers. I give Marvel a lot of credit accomplishing Iron Man under these circumstances. After all, the biggest risks yield the greatest rewards. These circumstances brought out the best of its team and created the film's greatest accomplishment, Robert Downey Jr.'s captivating performance.
You've been called the Da Vinci of our time. What do you say to that?
Absolutely ridiculous. I don't paint.
And what do you say to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death?
That's not bad.
In my video on Guardians of the Galaxy's soundtrack, I talked about how Marvel prioritizes its protagonists, how the weak villains and constant humor help keep the spotlight on our heroes. Iron Man embodies these methods, and then some. It's more than just Downey Jr. bringing his A-game, the entire film revolves around his performance. For example, instead of opening on some exposition crawl or MCU world building, the film opens with about 2 minutes of pure characterization, before the inciting incident starts the film with a bang. After this, we eventually do get an exposition dump, but all of it centers around the history of Tony Stark.
Tony Stark.
There are no hints of Avengers or Infinity Stones, and instead we're given a fleshed out look at Tony Stark and his daily life. The internal worlds that Iron Man creates completely revolves around its protagonist. In the first hour of the film, there's only one scene that doesn't star Tony, and that scene doesn't even last 40 seconds. Other details like the focus on technology and the MacGuffin being Tony's metaphorical legacy only further this point. The reasoning behind all of these decisions makes a lot of sense. If Iron Man is going to be a lead in this expansive universe, then his individual films should do everything in their power to make sure his performance leaves an impression on the audience. This is of course why Robert was cast. Not only were his auditions fantastic, but his personal recovery from substance abuse mirrored the journey that Stark goes on throughout the film. Director Jon Favreau knew that Robert would be able to connect with the internal sadness that drives the character, and the results are right there on the screen. Of course, a character is more than just the performance the actor gives. It's also the material they have to work with.
Yeah, okay.
Many people don't know this, but a lot of Iron Man was largely improvised. The story and character beats were always in the script, but a lot of the interactions between the leads were created on set.
I'm being responsible. That's a new direction for me, for the company.
This is so that Downey could give the best performance he could, injecting a lot of quirks and nuances into the role that blend the character from the comic with the actor that's portraying him.
It's okay, laugh. Hey!
To further help the character, there's also not a lot of action in this action film. There's barely 20 minutes of it, compared to the standard 45 minutes in other big superhero movies. On top of that, the action always remains rooted in character, with the film implementing a very clever face cam, so we can see Tony's expressions at all times. Despite the narrative revolving around Tony Stark, the film still takes place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and has a role in setting up the Avengers.
You'll be hearing from us.
From the strategic homeland and
Just call us S.H.I.E.L.D.
What's important is that the world building doesn't infringe on the intimate narrative at the center. The jaw-dropping Nick Fury cameo, for instance, happens once the movie's over, setting the trend for Marvel's post-credit scenes, or shawarmas, as they're now known.
I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
The film is also littered with Easter eggs, but unlike its peers, it does the smart thing in keeping them in the background, for only the most observant viewers to notice.
Let's face it, this is not the worst thing you've caught me doing.
However, the biggest piece of world building would be the inclusion of Clark Gregg's Agent Phil Coulson, who is a prominent player in the MCU, appearing in 4 of the 6 Phase 1 films, as well as having his own spin-off show. What I find fascinating about this is that this was never the plan. In the original script, he had a fraction of the screen time, and was only ever referred to as Agent.
His first name is Agent.
When the filmmakers saw the chemistry he had with Robert and the rest of the cast, they decided to improvise more scenes, give him more to do and more of a presence in the universe. It was from this decision that Coulson would become the connective tissue for Marvel's first phase, being the lovable character that links the films, and with his tragic sacrifice, bring these characters together.
And there's one other person you pissed off. His name was Phil.
You know, looking back at Marvel's first phase of films, it's a little rough around the edges. The stories aren't always the best, Iron Man 2 is complete filler, and Marvel didn't really figure out third acts until halfway through Phase 2. But in all of them, there was a strong sense of character, with time devoted to the intimate parts of these characters and their lives. Phase 1 was really special. It was a 4-year and 6-film journey that gave Marvel the time and room to experiment, to see what worked and what didn't, and how to change these elements moving forward.
Not a great plan.
Iron Man isn't Marvel's best film. Since then, Marvel has done far greater and more ambitious things. But it may just be the most important moment in Marvel's history, for Iron Man was the spark that led through their hardest years, and was Marvel's first step towards building their empire, created not through world or vision, but character.